welcome everybody to Unraveling the Unexplained. My name is Kat, and I'm a longtime astral traveler and spirit consultant. This is my brother John, longtime fan of the paranormal and the supernatural.
Hello.
And he has picked out a video that I have not seen before, and we are going to get reactions to it. So without further ado, let's see what we got going on today.
Nowadays, we are so used to scientific and technological development that almost nothing can surprise us anymore. However, there are a large number of strange artifacts that science hasn't been able to find a reasonable explanation for, either due to the way they work or even their very own existence. The case of the Betz Sphere, a mysterious metallic sphere accidentally found by an American family during the 1970s that had the ability to move on its own. At the time, the sphere caused a great media frenzy and came to be described by many as alien technology. It all started in April 1974 when a family from the city of Jacksonville, Florida, found a strange spherical metallic object with an approximate weight of 20 pounds and dimensions somewhat smaller than those of a bowling ball. The young medical student, Terry Matthew Betz, his mother, Jerry, and his father, Antoine, had been out to inspect the damage caused to their property by a fire that engulfed nearly 88 acres of swampy forest on Fort George Island, located east of Jacksonville. During their inspection, the family came across an interesting metallic sphere that was surprisingly undamaged. Indeed, despite the fact that the sphere was in an area that was devastated by fire, it showed no signs of burns or scratches, quite the opposite. The sphere featured a perfectly polished, shiny look. At first, Terry and his parents suspected that it might be a cannonball from the time of Spanish colonizers in the region. However, they discarded this hypothesis, mainly due to the perfectly preserved appearance of the object. Then they thought that it could be an object owned by the government, specifically NASA, or perhaps it could even be a part of a Soviet satellite. The family also considered the idea that the object itself was the cause of the fire, but they never found any evidence of this. What could this strange metallic sphere be? The sphere found a home in the room of the young Terry Betz and stayed there without causing any trouble until something very curious happened precisely on April 26. That day, Terry was with his friend Teresa Fraser, practicing his guitar as usual. Suddenly, the two young people started to observe something that seemed undoubtedly very strange. The sphere began to vibrate and emit a pulsating sound, apparently in response to the sound emitted by the guitar. After a few minutes, they noticed that the sphere was also emitting what seemed to be a kind of resonance that was inaudible to the human ear. They only managed to figure this out due to the behavior of the family dog. In the words of Jerry Betz, Terry's mother, "There must be some high-frequency waves from it. When we put our poodle beside the ball, she whimpers and puts her paws over her ears." A few days after this incident, the Betz family began to notice other strange occurrences also related to the sphere. The family discovered that by placing the sphere on the ground and pushing it slightly, it could change its trajectory at will and then return to the starting point. In fact, the Betz family even claimed that on one occasion, the sphere managed to stay in motion for about 12 minutes before it finally stopped. As Terry had a rather curious personality and was also motivated by the strange events related to the metallic sphere, the young man began to carry out a series of home experiments to try to find out what it was all about. Terry hit the sphere with a hammer to see what happened. This caused the sphere to ring like a bell.
Think of. Hit it with a hammer.
After that, Terry took the sphere and shook it vigorously.
We get all upset when aliens abduct us and they want to poke and prod at us. And yet the first thing we do is hit this poor
innocent ball that just loves music
with a hammer. I think we need to remember that when encountering strange new objects, Right?
Well-
Not unusual to conduct some experimentation. I don't know what we're so angry at aliens about when we're hitting stuff with hammers. I'm
Well,
just
I
saying.
mean, the video showed a sledgehammer, but maybe in reality it was just like a tiny little hammer. It was like a little
That's-
tink. I don't think maybe he didn't take it out of his backyard and just full forced it with a sledgehammer. It wouldn't be the first thing I'd think to do when I wanted
They're going to put the thing through a whole battery of tests. They're going to run electricity through it. They're going to hit it with hammers. Don't complain when aliens experiment on you. I'm just saying. We do this.
That poor innocent marble.
Damn thing.
Then placed it on the ground. To Terry's surprise, the sphere seemed to come to life and roll around the room as if trying to get away from the
No
alien.
shit.
On the other hand,
surprising.
if he placed a sphere on a glass table, it would move toward the edge of the table and then move away from it and toward the center of the table. Even more surprising was the fact that if the glass surface was tilted to one side, the sphere would move in the opposite direction, defying the law of gravity. While running all these tests, the Betz family realized that the sphere also seemed sensitive to weather conditions, specifically sunlight. They observed that the sphere's abilities became more intense on sunny days, something that didn't happen on cloudy days. Did the sphere use sunlight as a source of energy? This conjecture is strange considering that in the 1970s, solar energy was not commonly used. This strange ability of the sphere to move by itself ended up worrying the Betz to the point that they kept the sphere in a closed sack overnight, just as a precaution in case the sphere tried to escape. The Betz family were so amazed at the sphere's capabilities that they began showing it off to friends and family. As expected, the news spread quickly thanks to word of mouth, and at the suggestion of friends and family, the Betz finally decided to go public with their artifact, perhaps to see if the authorities could help them discover what the object was.
And that's when the real
Many
sphere
newspapers showed
began.
interest in the story, with the earliest article pertaining to the Betz Sphere being in the Jacksonville's daily newspaper, the Florida Times-Union, published on April 11, 1974. The article contained the following description of the sphere by Mrs. Betz. It would stop and then begin to return toward the person who rolled it, only to stop a short distance from the person and sort of vibrate, making knocking noises as if hitting itself against the floor. Also, there was a slight noise inside, like the sound made when you shake a defunct light bulb and the broken filament rattles a bit. It is a very tiny sound, but definitely there. The local Jacksonville newspaper also became interested in the story and sent an experienced photographer to the scene, Lou Egner, to see what information he could get. Egner was a very skeptical person, but he respectfully accepted the job. When the photographer arrived at the Betz home, Jerry greeted him eagerly and quickly showed him the sphere. Egner described the following scene in the April 12 daily edition of the Palm Beach Post in the following words. "I'm leery of this kind of thing. When I got there, Mrs. Betz said, 'You won't believe it if you don't see it.' She told me to put it on the floor and give it a push. It rolled a ways and stopped. 'So what?' She said, 'Just wait a minute.' It turned by itself and rolled to the right about 4 feet. It stopped. Then it turned again and rolled to the left about 8 feet, made a big arc, and came back right to my feet." Egner was very surprised by the abilities of the metallic sphere. He examined it carefully, but like the Betz family, he couldn't find the source of its mysterious behavior. Not only the press, but also the scientific and military communities showed interest in the strange phenomenon. Even representatives of the United States Army and NASA contacted the Betz family, as well as various associations of UFO researchers. Many visitors came skeptical about witnessing the phenomenon, but practically all left surprised to see what the sphere could do. Even the United States Navy went so far as to admit on TV that they had no idea where that object might come from. At the same time, they declared that the sphere was not the property of the U.S. government. In the midst of all this commotion, renowned astronomer Dr. J. Allen Hynek requested that the Betz family send the sphere to his office at Northwestern University in Chicago for further inspection. However, the Betzes refused, fearing the sphere would be lost.
For them.
So the strange artifact remained in the Betz house until some new events started to happen. Suddenly, the family began to hear organ music in the middle of the night, even though they had never had such an instrument in their home. On top of that, the doors opened and closed on their own at any hour of the day or night. It was then that the family agreed to leave the sphere with scientists at the Jacksonville Naval Air Station. Experts from the United States Navy put the sphere through a series of tests, but their initial efforts proved futile. Their machines were unable to penetrate the object. Chris Berninger, the Navy spokesman, said, "Our first attempts at X-rays lead us nowhere. We will use a more powerful machine on the sphere, and we will also run a spectrograph to determine what metal it is made of." Eventually, the scientists were able to determine several characteristics of the sphere, including its exact diameter, its weight, and the thickness of its coating. This was half an inch thick, yet could withstand a pressure of 120,000 pounds per square inch. This coating was some kind of stainless steel that had a magnetic alloy and was resistant to corrosion. The X-ray equipment also revealed two round objects made of a material of unusual density inside the sphere. They also observed that the sphere had 4 different magnetic poles, 2 positive and 2 negative, and that they were concentric. But they also came to the conclusion that the object was not radioactive or explosive, so they requested permission to break up the sphere and examine it in more detail. However, Jerry Betz didn't accept this, and the Navy ended up returning the object to its owners. However, many questions remained unanswered. What were those 2 round objects inside the sphere? Was the Betz family in possession of genuine alien technology? Perhaps some kind of alien listening device, as many have termed it? In July 1974, Dr. Carl Wilson, a representative of the research company Omega-1 Institute, examined the sphere for several hours and discovered that the magnetic field around it emitted radio waves. Wilson further said that the shell of the sphere contained an unknown element that made it slightly different from steel. Apparently, Mr. Wilson also witnessed the capabilities of the sphere, going so far as to say that it defied the known laws of physics. The results of the Omega-1 Institute's investigation into the origin of the sphere were similar to those of the Navy, so the mystery around the sphere remained. That same year, some members of APRO managed to convince the Betz family to bring the sphere to the UFO Congress since it could be proof of the existence of extraterrestrial life. In the event, the mysterious metallic ball became the center of attention again, being subjected to various tests, always in the custody of Terry Betz. The Inquirer magazine was commissioned to assemble a high-level panel made up of various notable experts. After a whole series of tests, the experts concluded that, despite everything that was already known about the sphere's capabilities, the device functioned as an audio transmitter. Although they were unable to determine the origin of the object, they still ruled out that it was of extraterrestrial origin. At the end of the event, J. Allen Hynek said that the object was likely man-made, while he also admitted having no idea what it was or where it came from.
I don't know where this is or where it comes from, but it's probably
However,
made by
the sphere caught the
humans.
attention of a high-level panel member, Dr. James Albert Harder, who would later carry out some studies on the artifact. The Betzes allowed Harder to analyze it, and the results were both intriguing and terrifying. On August 24, 1974, Dr. James Albert Harder, after having carefully examined the sphere, made an announcement at the International Congress of Ufology in Chicago that left all attendees astonished. According to a report based on X-ray studies, the 2 inner circles of the sphere were made of an element much heavier than any known material on Earth. The heaviest element produced in any atomic reactor has an atomic number of 105. while the heaviest element that occurs naturally on Earth is uranium, with an atomic number of 92. However, the atomic number of the element inside the Betz sphere was 140. Dr. James Albert Harder stated, "If someone tried to split the sphere, it could explode like an atomic bomb." The Betz family expressed concern, but they kept the sphere. After those statements, skeptics began spreading stories intended to destroy the credibility of the Betz family. Exhausted, the family decided to move far away, and nothing more was heard from them. Skeptics claimed the metal ball was nothing more than a Jacksonville Equipment Supply Company check valve. Even the president of the company, Robert Edwards, gave statements in this regard. "I'm not saying that this thing didn't come from outer space because I've never seen it. All I'm saying is that the physical description of it matches exactly the type of ball we have in stock." Also, sculptor James Sterling Jones claimed to have lost an orb that fell from his Volkswagen van while driving through Jacksonville in 1971. Sterling Jones claimed to have gotten some industrial valve balls from a friend who got them illegally. However, the experts who examined the orb did not observe any marks of the welding that industrial valves usually have, which cast doubt on these last two statements. After this, the public's curiosity quickly waned. Following this bizarre series of events, numerous spheres similar to the Betz Sphere have appeared around the planet over the years. However, none have managed to capture the world's attention as much as the Betz Sphere did in its time. Still, the mystery persists among believers. Where is the Betz Sphere now? Was it confiscated by the United States government? Why did the Betz family decide to hide like that? Would Dr. Harder's statements have something to do with this? Leave us your comments below, and remember to give us a like.
Okay, we will definitely link this video in the description as well as this channel. Go check it out. Support the original creators. We really appreciate it, and so do they.
Indeed. But what's your take on the mysterious metal ball?
I love it. I think it's a misunderstanding or a mistake to assume that all consciousness looks like our consciousness.
That it's organic and fleshy and limby.
That's a presumption on our part as humans because we assume that our consciousness comes from electromagnetic connections in the brain, and we've made a lot of we've taken some correlation and taken it as causation, right? Which is understandable given what we are able to observe from our standpoint. But to assume that all consciousness operates, communicates, functions exactly like our own does, it's a mistake to make that assumption.
Right. Essentially, consciousness could come in any number of shapes and forms, and it's possible that in this situation you have a mysterious sphere that's conscious in one degree or another of its environment. Maybe it doesn't know where it is or what's going on around it, per se. But it definitely responds to the things around it. Music, being pushed and prodded. And
it sounded like eventually it was trying to make some attempt at vibrating back, making high frequency noise. Assuming that what was reported in the video is accurate to what was taking place, and if you look at the behavior and what was happening, it looks pretty like a different kind of consciousness attempting to operate in an environment it's unfamiliar with and trying to interact, communicate, or whatever the case may be.
And who knows how it even got here, but...
Right.
Because they found it after a fire, and who knows, maybe its arrival caused the fire.
Yeah, it might have. fallen out of the sky, although you'd think there might have been people reporting seeing something like that if there was, although, I mean, not necessarily, depending on how remote the area is.
Yeah, what time it fell.
Yeah, exactly. It could have, I mean, it could be transdimensional. Like, it didn't necessarily fall from the sky.
It just kind of popped in, but
in.
whatever energy release happened when it popped in caused a bit of fire. Mm-hmm. But yeah,
it could be that a natural fire also uncovered something that had been laying there dormant for a long time, too. So that's hard to say.
And it only really started reacting to things once it started getting stimulated by stuff like music. And like, oh, there's stuff vibrating around me.
Well, like they said, it seemed to really only be highly active during, like, sunlight, like sunny days. So if it had been buried under debris and stuff for a long period of time, it's possible that it was dormant or didn't have the energy to function until it was brought back out into sunlight, where it had an opportunity to recover enough of its energy to actually
start responding to stimulus.
Start responding again, yeah. So it's interesting, though.
Yeah, it's an interesting encounter with, and one that doesn't really have a resolution, in the sense that, you know, there's no proven hoax. There's no, like, the family just kind of up and disappeared with it. Who knows where they are? And
the sense that I got from watching it was that the family felt like it was conscious and was not comfortable necessarily giving it to
guys who were interested in kind of breaking
break it open. And it seemed like, especially the mom, when they say her name was Jerry, was like, no, give me back my sphere. You know what I mean? Like, they weren't being very nice to it. And I feel that the sense I got was that the family,
this was almost like a member of their group, like their dog,
or at the very least recognized by them as aware. Like, it's not. The people who were closest and interacting with it the most did not seem like they were comfortable with the kind of experimentation that they were suggesting.
Eventually, yeah. They initially experimented on it themselves with the hammer, but I think maybe if you try to hit something with a hammer and you notice it rolling away from you, you might think, oh, maybe it doesn't like me hitting it with a hammer.
That's probably a sign that that's not a great, so... it seems to me like the family at the very least felt that whatever it was conscious enough to try and escape self-harm or harm or destruction. And so, yeah, they took it and just left with it.
Because they gave it over to the people to examine, but it's, without the people examining it couldn't really figure anything out about it.
Well, yeah, because when you're dealing with something you don't know what it is, it's such a hard thing for people to accept. When you run the testing on it and the inside of this is one behaving strangely and putting out weird electrical or wavelength signals and made out of a material that is heavier than anything we know on Earth, and yet people are like, no, it's a ball bearing from a company. Like,
it's like, yeah, that's a weird explanation. Like, oh, it could be one of our measuring ball bearing things. It's like, are your ball bearings known for rolling around on their own and reacting with vibrations to music?
There's at some point there's a, the skeptical are going to remain skeptical no matter what you show them. They could be abducted by aliens themselves and be like, oh, that was a weird dream. Some people just want to be skeptical. So, and that's okay. But I think the family definitely decided that nobody was going to believe whatever it was anyway. It wasn't going to provide any.
So we're like, we're done.
Yeah.
We're just gonna go somewhere else and keep the sphere out of the public view.
Yeah, they were willing to come forward and talk about it as long as they thought it might prove something useful to humanity. It might shed some light, some useful knowledge for us. But once it was like nobody was going to accept it or whatever anyway, and it was just bringing ridicule back on the family, they just took their sphere and left. I'm taking my ball and going home. And who can blame them?
Yeah, I mean, I can see the logic behind the decision.
I would take my cute sphere buddy and go home too. So that made me happy to see that they were like, no, give me back my sphere. I'm leaving. This is crazy. But yes, I mean, I'm left to conclude nothing except what, the same conclusion the family drew, that wherever it came from, it's in my personal view, I've met consciousnesses that are not human consciousnesses, right? And those consciousnesses don't necessarily have a physical form. They're not generated by brain patterns, or they're not organically grown. I feel that it's a mistake to close off our minds to the possibility that consciousness itself isn't necessarily organic material.
Yeah, I thought this was an interesting one to cover, because we've talked about aliens and ghosts, and this is a different kind of unique entity. It's like E.T. but Marvel version.
Well, yeah. And it just goes to show you, we've talked before about, I'm not convinced that everything we experience is all the same species or the same type of consciousness.
Yeah. All sorts of things could be popping up here from different places.
Yeah. Not only are we not alone, but we're in a crowd and we don't know it.
And every now and then, different elements of that crowd pop up and interact with us.
Sometimes I think maybe not even on purpose. I'm not sure that.
Yeah, that sphere probably didn't really know where it was or what it was doing or even how it got there.
Yeah, he might have been lost. That little buddy might have been a lost buddy.
That's fine. He found a family.
Yeah, well, good for him. Anyway, that's what I got.
Yeah, sounds about right to me.
Drop us a comment. Let us know what you think about it. Let us know if you think we're crazy. If you got a video that you think it would be cool for us to check out, leave a comment. Let us know. Like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Please check out the original creators. We appreciate it. And we will see you next time on Unraveling the Unexplained.
Have a good evening, folks.